Hi, guys. It
Hi.
is Julia Reed Nichols.
And Kitty Cat DeMille, and we are here with Better Than Sex, where we're going to ask, what's better than sex, Julia?
So far, nothing, but we
No.
try every week to figure out what might be, what makes it better, what can enhance it, all those
Those good things.
all the interesting people behind it, all those things.
Exactly. Now, you were on vacation this weekend.
Yes, if you can tell by my reddish color, I went camping this weekend. We converted the Pinups on Tour van into like a recreational camping vehicle, I guess. And I took it 10 miles up a dirt road to LeBaron Lake in Utah.
Yes, outside of Beaver, Utah, as you said last week.
Yes. And it was like I literally had my own private lake. There was one other group camping there. At one point, I was like on a toucan floating and had the entire lake to myself, just floating in the middle of the lake with like fish jumping around me and deer in the fields. And I was like, this is great. This is great. I love it. I'm sold.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I cannot speak enough about going outside and getting that vitamin D that everybody says is so important these days. Like when I was in Tahoe about a month ago, it was just delightful. And it's so nice to see nature too. There were a couple times we saw bears there.
Right?
Literally like walking around like the complex, like the gated community.
They had signs everywhere that were like, be very aware.
It is true.
Yeah. I mean, I did like at night. I mean, I was there by myself. So at night I locked up the van.
You did have an 8-pound guard dog.
Yeah, I brought my Yorkie poo with me. But the thing about Bella is at like dusk, she becomes kind of a liability because all the things that want to eat her start to come out. Yes. So starting around dusk, I like really keep her like really close because I don't want something to come out of the woods and just like grab her and take her away because she's an easy meal, quite frankly.
She's very easy meal.
Yeah.
Like a hawk, like in
that Sandra Bullock movie.
Yeah, the Sandra Bullock movie.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
the proposal when they're in Alaska. I love that movie. Movie. It's so much fun. But like, it just like picks up the little dog and flies away.
Yeah, so I didn't want Bella to get flown away, but it was great, and it was nice to get away. And by the way, I used a website called recreation.gov, and it cost $28 for like the most picturesque campsite I've ever seen for 2 nights. So good deal.
Give me 1 second.
No, you're fine.
I'm texting our guest.
It's, here's the thing about live streams is sometimes things interrupt it and you can't do anything about it, and that's okay. But honestly, I felt like Snow White. I started having conversations. There was like a chipmunk family, and I don't know if this would have happened if I wasn't there by myself. I think the brain starts to do kind of weird things after about 24 hours in the woods by yourself.
So, yeah. Did they talk back or no?
Oh, I mean, we communicated like telepathically. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Like there was this chubby one who you could tell he just wanted food. And I was like, I don't have any, I don't know what chipmunks eat. I don't have chipmunk food and I don't want to kill you. So I have nothing to give you.
He did not like that answer.
No, but he came around every couple hours and would just come up and talk to me about it and then go away.
So when I was in the Bay Area like a month ago, I did a hike in the Marin Highlands, which is literally like just north of San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge. And it's a decommissioned military base of some sort that they've turned into like these most stunning views. But there is one section where you overlook the Golden Gate and there's a coyote that just lives there and gets scraps. And there's signs everywhere that say, do not feed this coyote. Like this coyote is, but it looks like a dog because it's just laying there and it walks over to every tourist and is like, yo, what's up? And like, I mean, you're still like 10 feet away from it, but you're still like, holy shit, that's a coyote. Like, Yeah,
so, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I could tell that these chipmunks were very used to having people at the campsite, and they didn't see me as a threat. And what's worse is they didn't see my dog as a threat, because my dog didn't even like respond to them. She like acknowledged them at first, but after the chubby one came around a few times, and the chubby one actually stole a treat from her, then like it was fine. You know what I mean?
When I was in Tahoe with my sister, I was packing the car early in the morning before we left to go back, and I ran into a bear, and the bear was maybe like 15 meters away from me, and like the bear was just kind of like, yo, and I'm like, yo, and I was like, I don't want to move because you're a bear, and like but it was like a baby bear. It wasn't a big bear. It was like maybe a teenager.
But if there's a baby bear,
there's a mama bear. Yeah. And so then I ran over to the car and I honked the horn, and the bear looked at me and like, I swear to God, rolled its eyes. Like, it was like, this is not going to fool me. So what I did was I did what they said, where you put your hands up, and the bear walked away. So like, you know,
I mean,
they
do you think it was, do you think that's a coincidence, or do you think that's because you like made yourself big?
So they say it's because you made yourself big. My question is this bear so acclimatized to humans that when it sees that sign, it's like, fine, I'm just going to walk away from you, stupid human. Like, you know, so I don't know, but it did like, you know, because they always say that with a bear, that you're supposed to make yourself as big as possible. And
well,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just noticed that we have somebody else joining us.
Oh, we have a special. Oh my God, this sounds like Mr. Rogers right now. We have a special guest today, boys and girls.
All right, Pat, if you want to introduce our guest.
Sure. Hello.
Hello, ladies.
Hello. This is Caitlin Comeskey, who has worked with us on Pinups on Tour and Working the Tease. She was a host, comedian, singer, Jill of all trades, so to speak.
Have you always
introduction? Thank you.
I know. Have you always had 2 E's in your last name?
No, I think that's a typo, right?
No, I didn't know how to go back. I was always so late. I was like, I can't undo what has been done. So, like,
I literally was like,
where if someone wanted to find me, they could.
Yeah, exactly. But I literally was like, have I been spelling her name wrong for like 7 years?
You have been. We're not really friends. I'm so sorry. This is how you are.
Well, the funny thing is I looked down and I'm like, I know she's spelling it wrong. And the reason I know she's spelling it wrong is because I spent about 3 years learning how to spell your last name.
It's really not 3. It's 8 letters, girl. 3 years.
I mean, like, I was editing Pinups on Tour videos and like it would be fine except for the spelling of your name. I'm like, God damn it. And I'd have to go back and like export it again and like.
If I could go back and ease that burden on you, I would.
Oh my golly. Oh my golly. So, welcome. I thought it'd be fun to chat about some of our fun Pinups on Tour stories here.
Absolutely.
Or Working the Tease, both of them. Like, I think it's always fun to talk about road life because not a lot of people have done it. So it's very fun to talk about the glamour of it.
The glamour of touring, right? Like,
I mean, can we talk about the prestige first? Like, my God, prestige.
But I mean, when you say you've been on a national tour, people usually are like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. You're like,
oh, no, there's some power behind it. It's like, oh, wow, you've done comedy for people from Wyoming and New Hampshire. Get on down.
You've changed in many a broom closet. That's what I always say. And there's always like I always joke that there's always a creepy Santa because you're in the closet that has all the Christmas decorations, and then you turn around and there it is, the creepy Santa that's looking at you.
I mean, the longest tour I ever went on was 7 weeks. So some of the most intimate relationships I've had have been with those closet Santas.
Oh my God, I forgot you guys went on such a long tour when you guys were first starting.
I don't remember. I thought it was 5 weeks. I don't know.
It was 6 or 7. It was not my own time. We stopped to do laundry multiple times.
Well, lesson learned. We don't do that anymore.
Oh, and by the way, I would go back and do it all again in a heartbeat.
Well, it's not as bad now, I don't think. I think like the new people don't understand the like pain of the founding years and learning how to do this.
No, Kat slept on the floor in a sleeping bag once.
I have to say, like, it was like the mattress topper from IKEA, and I fucking loved it. It was so much more comfortable than like every bed that I slept in usually. And I had my own bed. I felt very Japanese. I felt very Japanese. Like, yes. But do you remember that mattress topper fell in a puddle at some point during that tour?
I don't remember that, girl.
I remember it because it was a different color for a while. It had like a big...
Oh, did you sleep on it after that?
There was a sleeping bag, so there were layers of protection.
I think by the time that mattress cover went away, it also had a big red wine stain on it.
Right on. I remember people kept stealing the magnets off our bus. That like, I mean, bus is generous, off of our vehicle. That had, like, we had one of those magnets that had all the branding.
Yeah.
But our branding was like cute little pinup girls. So like, I guess folks just like stole it to use for their own enjoyment. Have a fun fridge.
That's also like a giant magnet. It would take up like the entirety of your fridge.
I have 2 of them on my fridge right now for the record.
No, it's a size magnet.
Oh my golly. So what is it like hosting? Like, I feel like so much of hosting is there something going on? Do you hear that?
I do hear that.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Is that me?
Yeah. I don't know.
We don't know.
I have no idea what that is.
Wait, I can figure it out. Okay, yeah, it's definitely you. It's totally
Turn off my fan.
Live streaming.
Forgive me, I want to be cool.
By the way, anyone who's listening to this like podcast where it's the audio only format, this is captivating video that you're missing.
You can mute me, but I don't know how I'll know when I figure it out.
No. Oh, there. We got it.
Nice.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. I think that it's always interesting to find out about hosting. Hosting is a very you literally like the lifeblood of the show, right? Because like you set the tone and you make sure that the audience is in charge. You run the energy of the audience. What are some good suggestions you have when it comes to that? Oh, Caitlin's muted.
I was trying to. Yeah, I muted you to try to fix the noise, and then this is sorry if you're listening to the audio only version of this. We will
fix
do
it
better on future podcasts. That's better.
That is better.
Oh no! Every time we celebrate, it comes back. Okay, so the question was about being host.
Yeah.
Thank you. High praise. I absolutely loved being the host because there's definitely an adrenaline rush. Like, I'm a total adrenaline junkie. I've done stand-up. I've done like hard trails on the mountains when snowboarding. And I've also, I haven't jumped out of a plane, but like I would. And one of my dreams is to be on MTV's The Challenge. That's all to say I just love adrenaline. And there's definitely like a plate spinning type of energy when you're the host of a burlesque show and you're going from one different act to another. And, you know, depending on the number of performers, whether or not you can just like dip in and out and intro and outro and you're done, or whether or not, you know, like we need to add a game show element here because all of our dancers need a big costume change. And I always like loved that. And I learned a lot from Jessie, who invented the, like the stage act. What would you call it? The act.
The Boylesque boot camp.
The Boylesque boot camp, yeah. But
yeah.
So when you asked me to host on a tour, I was like, okay, well, I have to have that number because that fills so much time in the show. And we developed our own little obstacle course that I called Cox, which I was very proud of.
People had to, yours was the one where people had to put on like aprons and they had to do like domestics, like, right? You had to, they had to like scrub the floor.
The civilian obstacle course for servicemen.
Cox.
Awesome.
And Caitlin, when you hosted, you always went all out on your costumes. Can you explain the process for getting your custom costumes made?
Absolutely. So I was obsessed with this designer. Forgive me, I don't remember her name, but she worked out of a place in LA off, what's that street? Fairfax, maybe? Where it's this boutique called Trashy Lingerie.
Trashy's on La Cienega.
La Cienega, thank you. So I would just work with her, and I would probably spend more money than I was going to make on my costumes because I was like, well, these photos are forever, so I regret nothing. Got some good photos out of it, for sure.
And you and I share a love of wigs, though I have to say my wig love has only recently come into fruition. You know, I keep joking that I'm turning into Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek, where she has like the names of all the wigs and like the personalities.
Oh, absolutely. That's just so funny. It's crazy how they popped off on the Emmy nods this year.
Oh my God, yes. That is like that's one of my favorite shows of quarantine, other than Vampire Diaries. By the way, I just started back up. I'm doing one of the Vampire Diaries spinoff shows right now, which is very exciting. I announced
one of the spinoff shows.
Oh no, there's two spinoffs. One of them did 5 years. The other one is going into year 3 right now, prior to COVID. So I mean, whoever wrote these books is just got raking in the money at this point.
Good for them.
Good for them. Good for them. She was the woman. She wrote them like in the 90s, like in the late 80s, early 90s, I think. So, Caitlin's got her headphones.
I'm gonna try to see if this fixes the audio.
So, Caitlin, you're a lot. How did you get into stand-up? What was your stand-up?
I think I always, like, when I went through college at acting school, like, I got placed in older roles a lot. So I was playing a lot of mothers and like women.
And where did you go again?
Age. I went to NYU. I was at the Stella Adler Studio of Acting. And I played like a lot of grande dame roles. And when I graduated and, you know, I was 22 and looked pretty 22, there was a big disconnect, and I definitely had trouble auditioning and like finding my niche. And I think what the role of comedy played was giving me an outlet to create my own material and continue to exercise my instruments, if I can be so pretentious. And I will forever be grateful that developed into a touring relationship with Workin The Tease and Pinups on Tour, because I definitely learned so much getting to perform that often for that long.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting formula that we did with those tours. And Julia still does with Pinups on Tour. Like, what did we raise? Like $23,000 for Planned Parenthood? And I mean, what are your veterans at this?
I don't know the exact numbers, but I mean, we're at like, I don't know, maybe like $60,000, $70,000 with Pinups on Tour right now. And then, yeah. So close to 80, 90 grand altogether.
Yeah. Which is amazing how it like adds up over time. And then you like look at that number and you're like, that's a big number. Like, does
that have impacts for you? Like, does that not like make you feel pretty proud of yourself when you hear numbers like that you can stretch together something that meant so much to so many people, and that on top of that actually had a monetary value for the community, you know?
I don't know. I guess you get numb to it all after a while. You know, it becomes your press release and you've heard it so many times. You forget that, like, what you're doing is really cool. And when I run across people that like remind me of that, I'm always very appreciative, because it's definitely, I mean, we're now 5 years in, it's definitely become like a job, and I have people that help me, and you know, I don't know. It's a lot different than it was though when we started, and like it was like me and all my friends in LA doing it. You know, it's a very different thing now.
Yeah,
It's a lot less stressful now. I'll say that though.
I remember the Texas tour we went on. I don't know if you were on this one, Caitlin, and it was like one of our first Texas tours. And like we didn't know about the time zones, or we didn't think about the time zones. So like nobody got any sleep because we kept losing time as we were driving across the state. Like,
Yeah, from the time where usually our tours would go, where we'd start in LA or Vegas, and then we'd either go up to the Northwest or we'd go across Arizona and New Mexico. And you forget that when you leave Albuquerque, it is a good like 6-9 hours until you get to El Paso.
Yeah.
Or that time we drove from like Salem, Oregon to Los Angeles in one day. It was like 13.
The day the Pinups on Tour man made sweet, sweet love to the Western Coast.
Yeah.
I remember it well.
Oh my God, it's so true. Like, oh, just like by the end of it, we were all like, just
no, we did Seattle to LA in one day.
Yeah.
That's insane. And didn't like a couple people like tack on Las Vegas to the end? Wasn't there anybody going to Las Vegas?
Yeah, we've done a few crazy things like that. I'm not proud of it.
Oh, no. These are cherished memories. How dare you?
Yeah,
I was celebrating.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's one of those things that you tell somebody, and like, if there's somebody who's spent a lot of time in their same hometown and they haven't driven across the country a bunch of times, they're like, wow.
I remember when I used to think like a 4-hour road trip was a long time. Like I remember that. Like every Thanksgiving we would drive from Dallas to Houston, and I remember being like, I gotta get like my Game Boy situation. I gotta have like toys like within reach at all times. And then it's like now I'm like, 8 hours on the road, cool. There'll be 2 breaks, one of which will be a full meal. Let's go.
Oh my God.
It's true. I think about that all the time. I mean, I drove like 4 hours out and back to a campsite this weekend, and it felt like nothing. And I was like, there was a time in my life where having to drive an hour from Jackson to the Detroit airport felt like an eon. Like every time my parents made me do it, I thought they were like torturing me. And now I like voluntarily do it.
I feel like 4.5 is one of those time frames where you're like, oh yeah, I'll do like 2 hours, then I'll do a break, I'll get like a coffee, and then like keep going, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm here. This is great. And I think it's also just I mean,
we used to always give you shit for texting and driving. We'd be like, Kat, you're in charge of 9 people right now. Put your phone down.
You remember when we were in Salt Lake, and I was trying to get out of it like a Starbucks, and like I went over the curb, and you put the entire thing on Snapchat, which was
did. It was one of my better ones. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, you were like horizontal across 3 lanes of traffic. And like 2 of us were doing our makeup, and you were just like, whoopsie. It was like the look on your face.
Oh my God. What's so funny is that I was at the Sundance Film Festival in January, and I drove back to Las Vegas, and I stopped at that exit to go to a Chick-fil-A. And I was like, I remember that Starbucks. That was the Starbucks where that happened.
Oh my gosh. You know, another thing I remember about Salt Lake was they had like an up and coming fast casual chain for Greek food that was like hella palatable.
Oh, yes. I remember that place. That place was so tasty.
Yeah. There's one in Austin where I live now that's like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's same basic concept where you can do like a rice bowl, a lettuce bowl, or a gyro, and it's pretty rad.
There's a fast casual in LA that started up, and it's all like Mediterranean, Middle Eastern food, and it's all healthy, and it is like the bomb diggity. My sister and I went there 2 days in a row when I was there in January for her book release. Like,
No, it's a strange world. Like the other day, or not the other day, but they opened a Chipotle near where I work where they have a drive-through line to where if you do like a mobile order through the app, you can just like zip on through.
Yeah.
Oh, this is like my ideal world because you can plan everything. You schedule it, you show up, they drop it in your car, you drive away. It's like my dream existence. Everything runs on time and orderly and via the phone. I don't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah. I think Julia has some Swiss ethnicity in her background. She's like a solid clock, this one.
Yes, it's very Capricornian.
Oh, heck yeah. Are you
Yeah.
getting good at horoscopes, Kat?
I mean, I have a tendency to have certain friends in certain astrological signs. Like everybody knows their own, right? Like I'm a Leo, so I know all about a Leo. But like I have for Aries, I have like 5 friends who have birthdays within 6 days of each other. It's like bam, 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 bam. And it just shows you I like a certain personality type.
No, I was once in love with 2 men at the same time, and their birthday was 3 days apart, and I always thought that was so creepy. Even more creepy than me loving them both.
So how do you
Cancer, by the way, they were cancers.
Oh, you like the sensitive souls.
I did at that time.
Yeah. Cancers are great, but they're like so attentive and they're so loving, but then they're so fucking crabby too. They're so moody at the same time. Hence,
literally the most literal observation you can make about the crab sign. Do you hear yourself?
Absolutely, but it's true.
I'm so glad you had me on.
Absolutely. So Caitlin, tell me, how, like, you know, I always find it interesting. How do you craft bits in stand-up? Like, what is your process when it comes to that? Like, is it you make an observation and then you think about it and you kind of like formulate it with your friends here and there? Or is it like you say something funny and you're like, oh, that would be a good bit?
I think it depends on the type of work you're creating, whether you're doing an improv scene in class. By definition, that has to be extremely collaborative, which was never my strong suit, which is why I didn't make it all the way through the program. But in stand-up, like, it's definitely like you think of either a one-liner or something kind of crazy happens to you and you're like, maybe I can make this a story. I had like 1 or 2 solid story jokes in my touring years, but for the most part, they were me making fun. They were pretty, what's it called? Self-deprecating and, you know, about things that our audience cared about, I would hope. Like, I talked about body image a lot when you're at a burlesque show. I mean, I think that's pretty topical.
Yeah.
But yeah, but as opposed to like, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I remember you used to do this joke about women having nipple hair, and whenever you made it, I'd be the only one to laugh.
People didn't want to be faced with that reality. You are so right. Like, I remember like looking people in the eyes in the Flappers Yoo-Hoo room and then being like, we want to opt out of this bit. Like, I don't want to think about the fact that I have to deal with dark, coarse hairs on the sexiest part of my body. Like, no, thank you. I came here for escape. Now talk about guys having a hard time getting erections, please. I never had to talk about that. I'm sorry.
But it's definitely interesting being a female stand-up comic because, like, let's be serious, there's not as many. I personally feel like there is more of an even ratio in improv, where it's like you get the girls and the guys, but then like when you get into stand-up, it seems like it's so much more heavily dominated with males than females.
Definitely. I think it's by design, and I think that a lot of things are coming forward that hinted at something that I was always really intimidated by. And so touring with burlesque shows and having regular gigs at weekly burlesque shows was how I protected myself and stayed safe and got stage time and got better at my craft, because like the Comedy Store specifically can, you know, be really toxic in terms of how they treat women. And I think those things are coming forward. And yeah, I'm so thankful that I had Burlesque, because that was the community where I always did feel safe. And comedy, like, absolutely, there are 100% really cool guys that I was always friends with. They never mistreated me. I love them to death. But in general, I do think there's a toxicity, and I think that that would be hard to ignore at this point.
Me too. No.
Thanks. Did I sound smart when I was saying that?
No, it was great. I wasn't trying to like diminish your statement. It's a true statement. Yeah.
So who are your favorite female comics of the moment?
I've always loved Morgan Murphy really early on. She's done a lot of writing. She wrote for Two Broke Girls. I forget what her big special's called, but it's on album back when people were still really like doing albums. Sam J, 3 in the Morning, new special on Netflix, is absolutely flawless. Couldn't talk about it enough. She is insane. Ellen DeGeneres, mostly because I just appreciate the way she treats her staff. And I really have a big admiration for, like, you know, the girls that, you know, get A-list big doing it, like Amy Schumer and Sarah Silverman. I'm sure, like, a lot of the things that they've been taken down for, being too blue, being too inappropriate, or maybe being too self-absorbed or whatever, like, I feel like those are things that are for not even addressed as a topic of conversation in male comedians when you look at like the Joe Rogan circle and all of them. So I definitely feel like women deserve to have that power that a comedian like Sarah Silverman or Amy Schumer have cultivated for themselves.
Or like Ali Wong, like when
holy shit, I just finally saw Always Be My Maybe. How good is that movie?
Oh my god, that was so cute.
So
that was
funny.
So cute. But like, I mean, you know, when Ali Wong, I remember watching it and she was talking about like eating out her husband's ass. And I was like, holy shit, this is like a tiny Asian woman who's pregnant that's talking about this. This is like, I've not seen this yet. Like,
yeah, I think that's a lot of men's dream.
Yeah.
No, and I heard in a lot of interviews her address the fact that she's like, when I was first, you know, coming up, a lot of agents and managers told me I'd never get work if I didn't clean up my act and I wasn't so blue. And she really just kind of stuck to her guns, and her Netflix specials are huge. Like, so many girls dressed up as Ali Wong for Halloween the last couple of years. It's insane.
Yeah. Just great. Great. You know, I mean, because like overall, I think that the whole point of a comedian is just to show, like, it's showing the truth and making a joke about it, right? And the more it can be something that we don't talk about, but it exists, like nipple hair or something. You know, the more it's like, oh yeah, this is a real thing. This is a real thing. People have to deal with it. Like, you know, we might not talk about it, but it exists.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought it was hilarious. And then it would like make me laugh more that nobody else laughed, because I was like, I can't be the only person in this room with nipple hair, and none of you motherfuckers laughed.
That's so funny. I don't even remember this joke.
It never went well, so it didn't stay in the act long term. Julia saw it on one of its one and done nights.
I have to say, one of my favorite bits that you ever did was the time you were going to the Super Bowl and Snoop Dogg. Like, I still like that. That's like my quintessential Caitlin Comeskey. I'm sure it probably exists somewhere on YouTube.
I would bring that joke back, but I don't know that one's on tape. But I would need to add more punchlines. That one, like, I know the one you're talking about, and it was like solid, but it's definitely like needs more punchlines.
That joke gave me the confidence to fly with marijuana.
Everyone should. I cannot comment about drugs that are illegal in the city where I live, so sorry.
Yes,
I plead with it.
Absolutely. But she only references it in this joke that does not exist on the internet in any other form. So
we don't think.
I mean, I'm sure at least one creep in every audience I've ever performed for was recording my every move.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's like the hope.
One can only hope, honestly.
One can only hope.
Right. When I first came to Florida last year to help my dad out, there was an undercover cop that was across the street for a while because they live near a park and they were looking for somebody who had like fallen off the rehab bandwagon. But I was and I was like, I eventually, but like, because it was Florida, he had his
I feel like in Florida they make special like whistles to call that demographic of people. Like there are duck collars and pig collars. I feel like there's like a little wooden hand whittled thing that you can, and then like all the people falling off the bandwagon are just like, you got money for beer? Just like
Absolutely. I thoroughly agree with that possibility. But he kept his air conditioning on because it was Florida and it was hot. And I'm like, after like day 2, I was like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you sitting in this car outside of our house like all day long with the air conditioning on? And then he explained it to me and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Little sketchball change.
But that's very observant. I don't know if I actually would. I don't notice shit. I don't know if I would notice somebody sitting outside my house for 2 days.
You would if the car was on the whole time. That was the thing that like
that was weird. Yeah,
that was weird, right?
Okay, I'll give myself that credit.
Yeah. Yeah, give yourself that credit. You're smart enough to know if there's somebody maybe stalking you outside.
Yeah, just lock the doors.
Oh, man. So how are you keeping yourself creatively entertained during this quarantine time, Caitlin?
I started a reef tank. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know how to turn my camera around. Let's see if I can. No, I don't know if I can, but like.
Oh, wow. So is this a saltwater or a freshwater tank?
There's a saltwater tank with coral. I got 3 fish. I don't know if I'm doing a good job pointing.
Oh, no, tilt it down so we can see
like that.
A little bit more.
Well,
there we go.
Fish. It's very tropical. Why did you decide to start a reef tank?
Oh, because I like watched YouTube videos about it for 2 years, and I was like, "Girl, you need to like take a crap or get off the pot."
Well, I mean, I guess in Austin, that's the only way you're going to get the ocean.
Yeah, we have the Ladybird Lake, which is actually a river, but we call it a lake because we're quirky that way.
That's the river that goes through where everybody is on the tubes, right?
Yeah. Well, technically it's the Colorado River. Tubing is really along the Rio Grande for those in San Antonio in terms of river tubing, lazy river tubing. But the Colorado River is more boating and kayaking and paddleboarding, and that's where the bats come out from under the bridge.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the bats. Mm-hmm. There's like just a crazy massive amount of bats in Austin, right?
Yeah, like 500,000 go off from under this bridge every day at sunset. It's pretty breathtaking. And if you like a lot of bats.
Yeah, if you're into bats. So
if you're creeped out by that, like hashtag worst nightmare, maybe skip it.
Oh man, can you imagine if it was your worst nightmare and you had no clue and then they just appeared?
Why are all these people gathering? I should look where they're looking. Oh no, oh no, oh
god. What is are people doing a lot of outdoor activities in Austin? Are you guys outdoor dining, only outdoor dining? What's going on with that city?
I think there's some indoor dining, but they're like everyone's probably at limited capacity. Mm-hmm. I honestly don't want to talk about regulations too much because it's hard for me to then not talk about my job, which I don't want to talk about my job. Mm-hmm. But like things are open. I'm back at work.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. Nice.
Sorry to make it
like, let's think of a segue real quick.
Remember that time I made everyone awkward and uncomfortable? Cool.
Well, Caitlin, if our audience wants to connect with you about things that aren't your job, where can they find you?
They can find me, Caitlin Comeskey.
Not spelled how it is underneath.
No, there's just one E at the end. Comeskey. That's on both Twitter and Instagram. And I will totally follow you back. I love a good chit chat.
Nice.
Yeah. Are you still doing Twitter?
I am. I've actually rediscovered my love of Twitter within the last few weeks, and I've actually been tweeting out occasionally. Thanks for asking.
Ooh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, everybody go follow Caitlin Comeskey on Twitter.
Thank you.
And chit chat with her, and maybe she'll chit chat back with you if you catch her after the right number of drinks or something. I don't know.
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, Caitlin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
It was nice to reminisce about old tour memories.
Yes, tour memories. Sweaty people in a van together.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like being in the van, though. I went out there and spent the last couple of days, and it's not so bad. It's much nicer with me and Bella instead of like 9 people in it, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was driving cross country a lot last year for work, one of my favorite places to sleep is in between Phoenix and Las Vegas on the way back, because the stars are like the most amazing stars in the world. And you're in the middle of nowhere, and there are all these turnoff points for the truckers. So like a lot of times, like I would strategically leave at night so that I could like pull over and like look at the stars and take a nap, because I've just never seen stars that are so amazing. And that's one of the nice things about like car camping, is you get those experiences that you might not get otherwise.
Yeah, well, you don't see a lot of stars in Vegas. We got some light pollution here.
Yeah,
but
less light pollution than Los Angeles.
Yes. Okay, so one thing that we also don't, this is an awkward segue, but I'm going to make it.
No, do it. We've had enough awkward segments today anyway. So.
This whole episode's been a little bit awkward. So awkwardly going into, basically, sex work is criminal in Vegas, but outside of Las Vegas, prostitution is actually legal, which takes us to our first topic.
I want to know which one you're going with here.
Yeah. So you want to talk about decriminalizing sex work.
Awesome. Nice. Yes. So this was created by a company that has an Instagram page called Do You Want to Talk About? I think it's a way for like, it's kind of like a slideshow on like a basic thing on why it should be. And this one popped up on my Instagram feed, and it was all the reasons why you should decriminalize versus like making it legal, and what are the ramifications. So yeah, it was, overall, like police brutality was like one of the number one reasons, because the activities of most sex work is illegal to begin with. If things go sour, most sex workers don't call a police officer because they're already doing something illegal.
So this post was arguing for decriminalization versus legalization. So what is the major difference between the two?
So the major difference is that when you decriminalize it, you can't get prosecuted for it. Whereas if you legalize it, usually there are a lot of gatekeepers and fees and memberships you might have to join or whatever. So for example, like if you want to strip in Vegas, as a stripper, you have to go get a card, which is actually more intended for like gaming purposes, but you get fingerprinted, they run you. So you have to pay for a business license in Vegas if you're going to dance, along with getting a sheriff's card, as it's called. And that's because it's regulated. Whereas like if it was going to be legalized, they would have some system with that for sex workers. Whereas if you just decriminalize it, you don't have to do any of those steps that you would have to do to become a stripper in Las Vegas, if that makes sense. Okay,
so essentially it would allow, like, it would make it so it's not a crime to be a prostitute, but it's also not a legal field. So I feel like the government wouldn't be super inclined to this because they're not getting their cut of the cheese.
Right. And it absolutely makes sense. It's more than anything else, I feel like these posts are about just getting people to understand a system to begin with, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, it's kind of like the concept of like defunding the police versus like taking the money and putting, you know, like defunding police isn't ending the police, it's just taking the money and putting it somewhere else. Whereas like decriminalizing is perhaps creating a system where you can create an environment where sex work is considered just basic work. Now, I'm not saying this is the right way or the wrong way. This is just a potential way that you could go when it comes to sex work. And truthfully, like in this country, it's probably not going to happen because we were created by Puritans. So we have a lot of opinions when it comes to sex work in general that other countries don't have.
Well, it was really interesting reading the comments because a lot of people like personalized it and made moral like judgments about it. But you know, being like, would you want your daughter to do this? Or why would you want your daughter to be used by men? Or they're just using their body. But like sex work, yes, is using your body, but so are a lot of other professions. A lot of other professions use their body to make money. So like that in and of itself can't be the
defining characteristic.
Exactly.
And also, like, I think that a lot of times when you get into the sexier industries, like being a stripper or being a sex worker or being a cam girl or, you know, even like people who do like nude massages, like these are all people that are working more on the fringes of society. And there are so many people based on the constructs that they grew up with who see it as morally wrong. Which is the system of like good versus bad, which, you know, we have to have laws, right? Like, you know, we have a law that says you can't kill somebody, but like the question is this something that needs to be as heavily regulated as we regulate it? And, you know, in America at this point, for example, you know, like more than anything else, like it's very interesting. I think I've mentioned this before. I'm a member of a Facebook group that's all like strippers and sex workers. And like, they, you know, especially with the not being able to get any of the money that the federal government has given out, like it's people ask questions that maybe somebody who worked in another job wouldn't have to ask because they're getting unemployment, you know. Mm-hmm. And most of the girls who are in this group are the reason that they would be getting unemployment right now is because they do something else. You know, they might be a stripper, but they also are dog walkers, so they're claiming the dog walker to get the unemployment.
Yeah, I mean, it's really what's unfortunate to me is that in a country that's supposed to have a separation of church and state, I don't appreciate laws that are defined by religious norms, right?
Right.
So the concept of being paid for sex is bad is a very yeah, like you said, a puritanical mindset. Right. Because there's you know, there are societies that haven't had this, that are okay with it, you know, and do just fine with it, and it's a non-issue.
Right.
Even in Nevada, it's a non-issue outside of Vegas, but because Vegas is the tourist capital, because we don't have it in Vegas. But if you drive 45 minutes away, you can get legal prostitution.
And we have it in Vegas. It's just not legal. So there are a lot of people who are doing it. They're just doing it illegally in Vegas.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to this whole concept where it's like as soon as you make something legal, it becomes safer because then the people involved in it aren't criminals, like you're saying. Like, because what makes sex work dangerous is kind of what made the cannabis industry dangerous before. It's that you have to interact with criminals to be involved in it.
Right.
If it's above board and, you know, it's normal to scan the guy's ID and make sure it goes through as a valid ID, then that would be the normal system, you know?
Right. Like when we were talking about that article from Switzerland, where the brothels had opened in, I can't remember where it was in Switzerland, but they had like 20 plus brothels in that town, and they opened them up and they said, these are the rules in regards to COVID, and we're going to have to follow you now, like in terms of like, we're going to take a picture of your ID, we're going to hold it for 2 weeks to make sure, but like those are protocol rules, right? Like those are rules. Yeah. There was a TV show called Serenity. I think it was called Serenity. It was a Josh Wheaton, who's the guy who did like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And it's in the future, and it's like a space cowboy show. But on the show, the spaceship that they rented out a room in it to a prostitute. And the prostitute was considered like an esteemed member of the space crew. That they had this prostitute, and she was considered like with such esteem. It was like, oh my God, you have like on your ship. Oh my God, that's so amazing. And I always thought it was so interesting because it was such a different perspective of like a sex worker than what you normally see on television or just in general, where it's like, you know, and because they're all constructs that we just grew up with, you know, they're not like, that's the interesting thing to me, is that because we grew up in America, we have these belief systems in our laws that are just based on morality, when in reality, there are a lot of people who are participating in them, just not legally, which is a great segue to our next article.
Yes. Our next article is about women who pay for sex.
Yes. Which was very interesting. This was by a guy named Dr. Justin DeMille, I think is the way you say it. And it's a compilation of a couple of studies. And one of them, it was like 1,000 people were polled, and they asked men and women if you've paid for sex. And 12% of the men said yes, and 1% of the females said yes.
In America.
Now, in Australia, there was a sample that was 20,000 Australians, 16 to 67, and the number was somewhat analogous, which is like 17% of men said yes, whereas like 0.3% of women said yes. So it's one of those things where supposedly like no women are doing it, but it turns out that there are women who are doing it. And it's interesting how in the article they said that a lot of times when asking a woman, you know, would they consider prostitution, if it involved a man purchasing from a woman, they considered the female population inherently felt it was exploitative, like that the women were being exploited. But if you flip the roles, the women wouldn't feel bad about women buying sex from a man.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is one of these studies took place in Australia, where prostitution is legal. Right. So, you know, basically people kind of have their pick of the litter when it comes to prostitutes, so to speak. And it's all very above board. So it's interesting to read the different, or why women choose to use a prostitute in the article, because you kind of go, well, why don't you just go on a dating site and get a guy? Like, it's not that hard.
Right. And a lot of times the women who use these services, who go to an escort service looking for a sexual encounter, they're processing something. A lot of times they're processing trauma, or they have physical issues that they don't want to deal with in an actual like personal relationship. They said a lot of times, like in terms of like the biological functions not working perfectly, it's a great way for them to learn more about their bodies and really explore, so that they know their body, so then maybe they can go out and have a relationship. You know, in terms of like the therapeutic one, the one survey said that many achieved their goals of getting their therapy that they were looking for using the prostitution, to the point where one woman said that it should be rebatable by Medicare, which I thought was very funny.
Well, I mean, at a certain point, the job of a male prostitute sounds like it's different than the job of a female prostitute, right? The job of a male prostitute is almost analogous to a therapist, or their job's to communicate in a verbal way to make sure that the female client gets the physical experience that she wants.
And I will say, I mean, not that I've ever been a prostitute, but I will say that like any good prostitute will tell you that's the job of a female prostitute too. Because like if it's just about the bodily function, like you're not going to retain clients really unless you're that great of a fuck. Like, but most of the time, I remember being in a sex class like in my early 20s, and a woman who had been a prostitute was teaching it, and she said people just want to talk. She's like, it's more than anything else. And like, that's true in a strip club too. It's like so much of the experience in a strip club is if they're not celebrating something, they're usually wanting to process something, and they pick someone who they want to process it with in some way.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes complete sense. I thought it was pretty interesting that, that I mean, it's a vast difference though, when you go like 17% of men versus 0.3% of women. That is a huge difference, and kind of shows the difference between the sexes in a way. And I'm not sure if it's the stigma that is to why women don't do it, or if it's that women are like, I literally don't have to. I can get dick anywhere I want. I have a vagina, and dicks just fall in me if I want them to. Like, I don't know.
And I mean, I think that some of it is that men, especially as they get older, prioritize sexuality still. Whereas a lot of times I find that like older females do not prioritize sexuality. Like, it's kind of something that almost drops off, especially for, not that I've been married, but like I find my married friends, like, a lot of them, they're like, whatever, it's not as much of a important thing as like maybe as me as someone who's single is like, oh, I need to figure this out.
I absolutely think that, like one of the things like when I was out in the woods contemplating is that kept reoccurring is me being like, okay, I'm not getting the reflection relationships I want. Like, what do I want? And I kind of kept coming back to this concept where I'm like, well, the reason I am not getting what I want is because I literally don't have clarity on what I want, because I haven't seen what I want in practice. I've seen a lot of great relationships, but even a lot of the really great relationships that I know, when I talk to them, they're not having sex, or there's this other big elephant in the closet, or this other big thing that, and you kind of sit here and you go like, okay, so then what do I really want? Like, if either all relationships are flawed, or I can like manifest the perfect relationship, right? But then like, even then, what does that look like?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, it's a very, I think, important question, even more so during COVID, because like, as you are creating relationships, you need them to fulfill all your needs and be trustworthy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you got to trust that like people are saying what they're doing, and when your health's on the line, right? Because like, sexuality is fun, but we all have to be safe. We all have to make sure that like, whatever that level is, if it's like you're scared of AIDS and you need to wear a condom, or you're scared of getting COVID, so you need to make sure that this is somebody you trust. But like, I really do feel that like so much of getting a relationship you want is knowing what kind of relationship you want. And, until that, you're just testing it out. And I've gotten really into doing like focus wheels in regards to crafting the perfect person to come in, which is a very Abraham Hicks kind of thing, who's a channeled entity that I like to take advice from. You Google them, they're all over the internet. But it's like where you sit down and you're like, you come up with a statement like, this is my perfect person, or this is like my ideal mate. And then you come up with like bubbles around it that support it. Like, I've brought in this person before, or I like this quality about this person, or I like this. Because the more you can get fine-tuned on what you're looking for, the more the universe will give it back to you. But like, until you're just kind of willy-nilly.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that at this point that's my problem, because it's not that I can't attract someone.
Right.
I can attract a million people. They just all end up being like not right in a different way. Right.
Right.
So that's me. That's not just them. Like, they're not.
Well, and I mean, it's like also like, I feel like so much of it is like, you're just fine tuning. You're just getting clear on what you want. Like, every time you go through a situation, you're like, that's what I don't want. You know what you want, as long as you focus on what you want. you know, because there's a million people out there. So there's always that possibility. There's always, and like, somebody else that I listened to a lot said, which I thought was a great piece of advice last week, that the sign of an evolved human being is the ability to process and let go, which is like, this is coming in. Okay, this is good. I like this, but I don't like that. Okay, I'm going to let it go. And I know that the next one that's going to come in is going to be even clearer, or is going to be a better version of what I'm looking for. Because you got to always trust that if you are in love with someone that's like 83% of the way there, you know, and it could be that, like, I don't know, they're married, they're not available, like they're workaholics. Like, there's so many storylines where like you're not getting what you want, but you're willing to hold on because you think you only deserve that 83%. You don't. You deserve. You never get to 100%. Let's be serious. But you can get to like 99% clarity. You just have to get closer and closer to what you're looking for mentally first. You know, being like really clear. Like, I want this. This is what I want.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm taking that advice in. I'm not there yet, but getting clear.
Yeah, and that's the fun of the whole point of being here and dating and exploring. And
yeah,
learning.
it's hard with COVID because, you know, you can't date that many people. So you got to like really like pick them out.
You do. I mean, COVID just makes everything different. Like, I was talking to my dad the other day about moving, and he's like, well, where would you end up? And I was like, well, pre-COVID or post-COVID? Because they're two different places. Like, you know, like,
you can go anywhere.
Yeah, you can be anywhere. I mean, like, people are moving out of cities in droves right now. Which is like, if you have any involvement in the housing market, like, things are getting sold left and right. Like, people are moving in and out of apartments left and right. It's pretty crazy how the landscape's changing so quickly.
I've seen a lot of my college friends leave New York or LA in the past 3 months.
Yeah.
Pretty much they've all made this big emotional post about how they moved 10 years ago to the city that changed their life. And thanks to COVID, they now all have to move home or move to the next city that they're going to or whatever it is. And it's disappointing. I'm sorry so much. And it's not disappointing if people are enjoying their next step, but if they feel burdened by it, that's disappointing. And I think like I'm just having a very good COVID experience. So it's, you know, a lot of things have changed. Yeah, of course, like everybody else, but I'm okay with the changes.
Yeah, no, I am too. I find that a lot of the things that people, so for example, like I find that my experience in LA, and I love LA, don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore it, but it was like you had to move there to be discovered. Like that was like, if you wanted to be an actor, there were two places that you went. It was LA and New York. And like you got to pick your city. Like, did you want to be more of a theater actor? Then you should go to New York. And if you wanted to be more of a movie and TV person, you moved to LA. Like, you know, and then like you got there and you hoped somebody would discover you, which in this day and age, you don't actually do. We're doing a video podcast like out of our homes. Like you can have any career you want wherever you want to some degree these days. Like, you're not gonna.
It's also a terrible storyline to teach people that you have to be discovered. Like that somebody has to grant you permission to do what you want to do.
Yes, yes. And it is almost, in my opinion, a trap in LA that you and I were both blessed that we got out of to some degree because we moved to Vegas and it was a different mentality. But like it is, you're constantly trying to go to parties where you might get discovered or like have friends or, you know, and you just
walk carpets, do interviews, like all the things.
Yeah, all of it. It's just like you're trying to find this validation that you're never going to find that way.
Well, you know one person that found that validation.
Ann Margret.
Yes, Ann Margret, who is our super sexy woman of the week.
She is.
I pulled up a ton of clips of her just to watch, and she's such a delightful entertainer.
She really had a very interesting line of walking like she was such like an early 60s girl where like she was sexy, but she was sweet and she looked all American, even though she was Swedish, which I had no idea that she was Swedish. I had
no idea she was Swedish either.
I thought she was apple American pie through and through. But yeah, like, and just, I knew her from Bye Bye Birdie when I was growing up watching musicals. I had seen Viva Las Vegas a couple times. And then when I was a little older, Grumpy Old Man and Grumpier Old Man came out.
Which also has Sophia Loren.
Yeah. But Ann Margret was like, she did, she was nominated for a bunch of Emmys. She was a sex pot, and she had like a torrid affair with Elvis Presley too, which made her get the slogan. She was considered like the female version of Elvis when they rolled her out in the 60s, because like she had this insane affair with him and they were doing all these shows in Vegas together. But at that point, he had been betrothed to Priscilla Presley already, but Priscilla Presley was underage, so they were waiting for her to become of age so he could marry her. So it was like
he was just gonna bone Ann Margret in the meantime.
He totally boned Ann Margret, and there was a lot of questions about whether or not he was not going to marry Priscilla because of Ann Margret. But he had made a promise to her parents. Who knows? And if he was waiting to have sex with her, if he actually did have sex with Priscilla beforehand. So he felt like he had to marry her because she was very young.
She was very young. That's something like there was quite a few of those singers when you like was it Great Balls of Fire?
Jerry
Lee Lewis. What's his name? Is
that Jerry Lee Lewis, or there's Jerry Lewis and then Jerry Lee Lewis? I think it was Jerry.
Either way, the Great Ball of Fire guy. Yeah. He married she was like 12 or 13 or something.
She was definitely a teenager when he married her.
And Priscilla Presley, when she came to live with Elvis, was like 16.
Yeah. I think she might have married him when she was 16. Like, I think they were waiting. She might have been 15. Because I don't think they got married when she was 18. I think she was very young.
I don't want to say this as like a criticism, but a man that chooses a 15-year-old bride is not choosing to marry an equal. You know what I mean?
No, I think at that point you just want a lovely young fresh energy, Yeah.
Exactly. That wasn't enough because he had to go to Ann Margret.
Right? Exactly. I mean, age is something that's very funny and relative too, because here in America, certain things are 18, certain things are 21. But like if you go to Great Britain, they're 16, and a 16-year-old and an 18-year-old are completely different entities a lot of times, just in terms of their experience. Which, goes back to that whole we were a Puritan nation, and we've got like a little bit more of a strict rule when it comes to like when you get your individuality, I guess, as a
society.
Yeah, but anyway, Ann Margret's great. I feel like this is a very intellectual conversation we had today.
No, but she's super sexy. Honestly, like I was watching her stuff. She was so fun. There was this one number in Bye Bye Birdie where she's like changing from an outfit into a sweater and taking her clothes off and then changing into sweats. And she's sexy and adorable at the same time. Like, I would love to just manifest Ann Margret in all my acts. That's what she's like, my new spirit animal, her and Jessica Rabbit.
Yes, she's very like all American and sultry at the same time. Like it's like the perfect combination of those two. Fun fact: she also is an avid motorcyclist, or was for many years, and actually she owned a Triumph, and actually did the Triumph motorcycle campaign in the early 60s. As like which
How
I just was,
fun!
I
You know,
know.
Triumph also made my car.
Oh,
It's a Triumph Spitfire.
Oh, you're right. It is a Triumph Spitfire, and Triumph is considered a very nice motorcycle brand, correct? That's my
I think they use that's like their. They don't do cars anymore, but
right, yeah,
yeah.
So,
Very
and
fun. Well, she's a badass woman. So, what are some movies people can check out if they want to see Ann Margret's work?
Viva Las Vegas, Bye Bye Birdie, the Grumpier Men, because it's like her as an older, but she's
still sexy as hell.
She's still sexy as hell. She's still like adorable, like, you know.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think I'm gonna try to see if I can find Grumpier Old Men on either like Amazon or Hulu or something. That sounds like a delightful watch.
They are. They're lots of fun. So
yeah. But that's all I have for you this week.
Cool. That's all I have too. We are going to do another one on Thursday with another special guest. So
yeah, so make sure you tune in then. Of course, you can always find us in iTunes. Remember to rate and review us if you like the podcast. You can always tune in to our website to check out all the YouTube videos, past and present, at WTTburlesque.com or on all the social medias at WTTburley. Until next time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.